Thanks for joining in. The session will run for about 30 minutes. It's a mid-level kind of knowledge experience. You don't have a bit of an understanding on some of the fundamentals of Wrike already. But if you're coming in for the first time, I insist you stick along. You'll probably learn a little bit more as part of all of this. We'd like to be able to make these sessions engaging as well, of course. And by the way, these two faces up on the screen, my name's Alex Homer. I have the pleasure of being your host. I'm a Customer Success Strategic Program Lead out of APJ. And we've got Clark Fuller, who I'll give him an opportunity to do a proper introduction in a moment. Clark is a professional services engagement manager, and of course, he'll be facilitating the session with us today. As I mentioned, the session will run for about 30 minutes. We encourage you to leave questions for us throughout the session. If I find a moment to pause Clark throughout it, I will. Otherwise, there'll be an opportunity at the very end, of course, to give or share your questions. The session has been or is being recorded if you're watching us on demand. Thanks for coming along. And yeah, let's get into it. What do we hope to get out of the session today? Well, we'd hope that you'd be able to utilize custom fields and understand how to be able to surface your projects a little easier with Wrike. Utilize custom item types, develop automations with the combinations of those sorts as well. Now, before we dive into it and before I hand it over to Clark, you've probably heard of the likes of Siemens, right? They're a pretty big mob. They're a pretty big technology group, or I should say across the board, really. Kind of conglomerate mob that's utilizing Wrike across their organization. And they've come to Wrike with the challenge of having a vast amount of projects, large and small, and coordinating a stack of projects with a stack of people around the world has taken a significant amount of time. So they would like to be able to try and reduce their time. How? By having custom workflows, improving collaboration, by having automations within Wrike, by putting together blueprints that enable them to automate, sorry, I should say, not just automate, but actually templatize a lot of the work that they might consistently be doing. And of course, the results there from Christina Fisher. Now we can ensure that certain steps of our standardized process have been followed, approved, and viewed by the right people. And they've managed to improve their productivity by around 10%, which is a pretty amazing stat given how large of an organization Siemens is. So how do we be able to make that happen? Well, I'm going to hand it over to Clark here. He's going to give me a little bit of an introduction on who he is and how to make this happen. Clark.
Thank you, Alex. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you and look forward to going through this with you. So as he mentioned, I'm an engagement manager, which means that I work with some of our larger customers and help oversee their deployments. And automations is definitely a subject that many clients are interested in. So there's a lot of good efficiencies that can be gained here through automating. Let me share screen here and let me jump in. So I want to start, I'm in a demo environment here, and I want to start with just talking about different parts in the process where you can add automation. And let's start with the intake process here. So I'm looking at this particular space that I've opened, and if I go to the gear icon here, as a space admin, I can go in and look at the request form. And in the request form, there's lots of opportunities to automate your workflow. And I'm just going to touch on these lightly. We have an additional webinar coming up at 2 actually that will cover request forms more in depth. So just want to kind of put this on your radar. On the left-hand side, you can automate what the status is set to. You can automate who the assignee is, whether an approval is added. Rescheduling is a powerful feature where you can reschedule all of the dates in your blueprint to match up with the date that is brought in from the request form. So you bring in a due date and then you reschedule all of your dates to line up with that project due date. Over here on the right-hand side, we have different question types. And one of the questions here is what service this opportunity is related to. So there's a form where we're intaking opportunities. And you'll notice that we have some automation built in here. So when you have a single select or a multi-select in this case, you can add branching logic using the icon here. And we're indicating that if the opportunity is for audit and assurance, then we want to tag it into this parent folder and we want to add a sub-project related to that. So lots of good automations that can be done here on the request form. You'll notice I can add an approval, add a project owner, etc. So I encourage you to check that out if you haven't had a chance to play around much with that. Lastly here, I wanted to call out that you can tag the values from your responses into a custom field. And you'll notice that I'm doing that here. So if I select my drop down here, I'm tagging these values into the service custom field. And the way you would do that initially, so this particular question here is not using a custom field. And you'll notice that I have this option here to use custom fields to map it in. I select that, and then I have an option of selecting fields. Okay, so with that, let's jump back to the talking about the automation engine and how we can automate using rules in there. So again, I'm going to be at the space level here. I'm going to come into the gear icon and go to our automation tab. Actually, before I jump into that, let me talk a little bit about custom item types, and then I'll come back to automation rules. So custom item types, they allow you to identify what you want, a specific item type for a specific type of work. And you'll notice here in our case, we have, our audit and assurance offering, consulting offering, et cetera. And you can define the type that is. So if I were to create a new custom item type here, I can define whether it's a task type or a project type. You can think of this similar to standard projects and standard tasks. What you can do with them kind of follows suit there. And then you can create, when you create that item, you can give it a specific icon. It will default to the standard icon. I would encourage you to change that so that you have a visual indicator for your custom item type. So in this case, we have our audit and assurance item type here. And when we go into that, the item type allows you to set the layout and identify which particular parts of the layout you want hidden or shown with the little eye icon here. You can change the order of the fields. That's particularly helpful for custom fields. So if you only want specific custom fields to show, then you can enable those on your item type. And then down here, we have the option of managing automation rules. And so you can create an automation rule that applies specifically to that item type. So let me pause there. Is there a question you want to jump in with, Alex?
Yeah, I guess kind of one of the questions was around what are the kind of key differentiators between a standard task and a custom item task, I guess, right? What's the benefit essentially of that, if I understand that question correctly?
Yeah, one of the big benefits is that you can filter on the specific item type. So when I'm reporting in standard reports or in analyze reports, I can add a filter to show me only item types of that specific item, right? So I can say, show me all of my opportunities or show me all my audit and assurance items. Whereas without the custom item type, you would have to have a custom field on that project to indicate this is a project for audit and assurance. So it streamlines the filtering and identifying those items is a big one.
And I noticed there that you've got a project that has several custom item types as part of it, meaning I guess it makes it a little easier to determine the types of work that might exist as part of that project.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. For
Beautiful.
sure.
Okay. I hope that answers that person's question.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's come over to our automation tab here, and let's look at some of our automation options. So when you're creating an automation, if I start from scratch here and add a rule, the first question is, what is the scope here? And you can apply it to a specific item type. So this is what we were referencing earlier. I'm going to apply this to only audit and assurance items. And then you can also determine the location for that. So I'm going to apply this to the entire space or to a specific location, a specific folder. And then the rule is made up of triggers, conditions, and actions. So the trigger is what causes the rule to fire. And this one, there's many different triggers here. We'll go through some specific examples, but just to highlight a couple here, if the status changes to a particular value, or if the status doesn't change in X number of days, then I want to trigger an action. The condition allows you to narrow the scope of the rule even further and say, I only want to apply this rule to items that have a specific custom field value or that have a specific owner. And then the action is what is going to happen when that rule is triggered. So you'll notice we've got many different actions here. Some of the more common ones are to add a comment or at mention, and we'll go through some specific examples there. Changing status, moving the item to a specific folder, or tagging it into a folder with the add action. Okay, so let's look at start with kind of a basic rule here. So let's look at this one here. So we've got we're applying this rule to the audit and assurance item type. And we're saying when the status changes to scoping and planning, so we're using a specific status here, then we're going to take an action, which is to send a notification to this user that we're logged in as, the VP ProServe Teresa, and indicate that that project has changed, to that specific status. So if we come over here and we come down to our services here, and we come into the audit and assurance folder. So here's our various projects for the audit and assurance type here. And now let's take this one, ABC Corp, and let's change this to scoping and planning. So change it to the second one there. And then notice that triggered a notification up top here. So if I come over to the inbox, I've got a notification indicating that that project was changed to scoping and planning. If I click that, it takes me right to the project. And if I scroll down to the bottom, I can see that the automation bot put in the message here indicating that it was changed. And this automation bot, that's the user that will be responsible for acting on the automations. Okay. Pause there. Questions on that one?
So far, so good there, Clark. Nothing, no
Okay.
questions on that one. Thank
All
you.
right, very good. Let's do another one where let's do one where we're going to move folders on a status change. So in this case, let's take our when an opportunity moves to closed lost, then we're going to move the item. So let's do this one here. Let's see. No, sorry. Let's do this one. All right. So in this case, we're applying this rule to a specific item type. In this case, it's the opportunity item. And our trigger here is it's moving to a specific status, in this case, closed lost. And then we're going to move that item over to the closed lost folder as part of our action. So the difference here between adding an item and moving it is adding just tags it into that folder. So this is cross tagging, where now that project is going to live in two folders at once, whereas moving is actually taking it out of one folder and putting it into another. So in this case, we're doing a move action here. So let's come back to our space here, and let's go into the opportunities, and let's take a look at this one. So in our opportunities folder, we have some subfolders here of new and active, closed won, and closed lost, as you see down here on the left-hand side. And so if we take this, let's take this PQR insurance one here. we see that it's an opportunity based on the custom item type icon. And if I click that and change it down here to closed lost, now it's going to move it from that folder and bring it down here into the closed lost folder. And then if we open this up and take a look at it, we'll notice that similar to last time down here, we've got our automation bot message indicating it was moved from one folder to the other. Go ahead, Alex.
I've got a great question here. In fact, this came in from somebody before through the polling, actually, when we kicked off the session. It's a good use case, actually, where the question is around, and if I think I understand this correctly, where they complete a project and the last billing date becomes more than a month in the past, then move that project to the archive folder. So I think if I understand this correctly, Clark, there's kind of a couple of conditions that we might want to put around this. It'll be a case of when the project is completed, and if the task or the project, I should say, has a custom field where the date is 30 days after, then put it to an archive folder. Is that something that might be possible, do you think?
So the challenge with that is going to be the 30-day time frame around the custom field. So you can use as a condition a custom field that has, a specific value. I'm not sure that we can do anything with a date field. Let's see here. So last contact date, 30 days ahead, not populated this month, last month. So these are options here that you can have. What you're looking for is kind of a rolling time frame, of something that is 30 days past, and that's going to be a little challenging here with our options. You could certainly trigger based off of the item type. So when this project changes to a specific status, you could message and say, let's check that the date, check if we're in 30 days or something like that. But I don't think we're going to be able to quite get that full rule in place.
Gotcha. Okay. And I wonder then, and this is sorry, I'm putting ourselves on the spotlight here. Could we do it around a formula, do you think, to say, well, if it's days, a formula to potentially calculate after the fact, and then use that combination of if it's been greater than or equal to 30 days. I'm thinking outside the box here for this particular person. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can count the number of days after the what do they call it? We called it the
billing date.
The billing date. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's a good thought. Yeah, that's a real good thought. That's something to play around with. There's a potential path there.
Someone's just had a great suggestion here, however. Could you use the last month option? Which is actually a really good point, because that would probably work as well, now that I think about it. If the billing date was last month, except where that might come into be a bit of a challenge, and I'm going to answer this one for you, Clark, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Is that let's assume that we're 2 days after we're on the 2nd of October, and therefore it hasn't been 30 days after the last one. So it wouldn't be a full 30 days. It'd be literally what was last month.
Yeah.
But I like where that person's thinking was going. I like that thought. Anyway, we're getting bogged down on that one. So I'll let you keep going here, Clark. Thank you.
Okay, very good. That's excellent. All right, let's do one last example here, and then we'll talk through some kind of general use cases that you can do for rules. So let's take an example where we have a closed lost partner referral, and we want to make sure that that gets highlighted, right? So we're applying this to opportunity item types when the status changes to closed lost, and now we've got a condition added in of op source equals partner referral. Then we're going to @mention this particular user here and indicate that that partner referral is marked as closed lost. So if we come back to our opportunities tab here and we look at the in our new and active leads, we have this Your Health opportunity here. And if I scroll over to the right, we'll notice that this is a partner referral. So that when we did the intake process through the form, it set this custom field value as partner referral. So now if I were to change this one to closed lost, so let me select the status here, change this to closed lost, it's going to trigger both rules. It's going to move that item down to the closed lost folder, which is the second rule we looked at. And then it's going to trigger the next rule to put the notification in to indicate that that partner referral was closed lost. And we see that that happened here. So in this case, I'm using one rule with kind of a general application and then a second rule with a more specific application to take an action on my partner referrals. Okay, let's talk about some general use cases for automation. And I'll just kind of put these out there as things to consider and try out in your environment. And then we'll open it up for questions. So a good use case here is if you have, let's take a project here and for our condition or our trigger, I should say, all direct sub-item status is changed to. So here's an example where you have people who might be forgetting to mark the parent project as complete when a sub-item, all the sub-items are done. So you could put a rule in to say, okay, whenever those all go complete, I'm going to mark the parent item as complete. Another one, status notification doesn't change in. We talked about this briefly. Let's say that it doesn't change in 15 days. That indicates that it's kind of stuck in that status. Let's take an action on that. Let's notify, let's move it into a specific folder, etc. Another one, the due date is approaching. So this is a great one to kind of keep things on track. You've got a date is approaching or overdue, and you have different options here. So the due date will be within the next X days, or it has passed and it's now 3 days overdue. You can select a time zone that you want that time trigger to be based off of, and then the field that you're marking it as. Last one here is adding a prefix or a suffix. So if I come down here, one of my actions is to change the name of the item, and I can add a prefix or a suffix and define what that will be. So those are some helpful automation rules. And with that, I'll open it up for questions and turn it back to you, Alex.
Clark, thank you so much for that. I've got another great case study or a great use case here around could we possibly populate custom fields with specifically, I think the scenario they've offered is they move their task through various statuses, and based on the status, they would like to be able to populate a custom field with a percentage completed. And this is a great example, I think, and I'd love to be able to work this through with you. I think the intention is to be able to say they calculate what percentage completed they have against a task so that they can roll that up to a project level to suggest by a little bit more of definitely definite amount to say we're 70% completed on a project. And so I think they'd like to be able to automate it to say if the status moves from new, in progress, halfway there, waiting for approval to completed, the moment we move it to say halfway there, it's 50%, to nearly there, we say 70%, and completed to 100%. Do you think that we could do that?
Yeah, definitely can do that. So your trigger would be the status change, and then your action would be this change custom field value. And we chose a percentage custom field, in this case, a probability, and we can just select our option of changing this to a specific value and enter our value here. So you would just set up a rule for each status change, right? So if it status changes to 50, halfway there, then set your value to 50%.
And I've got a question here for you. Is it possible? We've got an instance where a user has, one of the people in the room has asked for, is it possible to trigger or make the trigger based on the change of a custom item type? So they move that custom item type from being a risk issue through to being a, where have I got it here? They move it from being a risk to, my apologies here, I'm reading this carefully. So I wanted to believe, change the risk to an issue. Change it from a risk item type to an issue type, I should say. But when they change it to being an issue type, they'd like to be able to get notified for it. And apparently, I don't think we get notifications based on the changing from one item type to another. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's a great suggestion and one that I know our product team is aware of. It's not currently supported with the rule set.
Fair enough. And I guess on that point, it probably there might be an opportunity to change it to a different item type with the actual automation.
No, unfortunately. Yeah, we
Okay.
can't take actions on item types.
Understood. Okay. Well, leaving it open to the floor, I'll give it another minute or so. We do have, we are kind of running shorter on time, I guess. It's wild how when we get questions, how quickly these sessions go. I appreciate everybody's questions coming through here. So, questions, anybody? Leaving it open to the floor for another minute or so. Nothing coming through there. Okay. Well, on that note, if you do have any questions and you're at a point where you're like, you know what, that was a great session. Clark did some really great stuff there. Although I'd like to be able to explore this a little bit further. How do I go about? There's a bunch of people around you to be able to make that happen. There, of course, is our support team who are there to potentially help you with, I can't figure this out, or it's not working for me for whatever reason. This automation, the way I thought it would work, isn't working for me. They can help you troubleshoot with that. There's, of course, your customer success team who are there to ensure that you're seeing value out of the platform every single day. There's the help page. There is an article on every single bit of functionality within Wrike. There might not be an article on all the possible automations that you might come, because I feel like the possibilities are endless, but there is an article on every bit of functionality and how it ultimately works. Now, I hope you know about our Discover page, because it's probably how you got here in the first place. So, of course, there's a whole stack of classes and sessions and courses that you can get access to there. And, of course, this on-demand session, if you're probably watching it, it's probably how you got there as well. And, of course, last but not least, I shouldn't say last, but, of course, there's also your account manager. And your account managers are typically there from a billing and logistics standpoint. So if you ever need assistance around, or I need to get some more assistance, or I need further help, or if you need to get further help, like I said, from the likes of Clark Fuller, appreciate you very much. There's, of course, our professional services team. Our PS team are experts in their field. They know Wrike incredibly well. They've been getting our customers on board much sooner, much more efficiently, much more effectively, and they're there to make sure that you'll get your investment, a rapid return on your investment. We know that working with our professional services teams see a greater chance of adoption, or a greater rate of adoption of the platform, meaning that you get a better use out of Wrike much sooner as well. Anything else there that I'm missing, Clark?
Looks good. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everybody, indeed.